Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. It's producer JL coming at you the day before Thanksgiving, here with co-host and friend of the show, also the guy who runs the damn thing, Dave. Dave, how the heck are you tonight?
Did you just call me friend of the show?
Yes, I did.
God, and I thought my brain was getting smoother by the second.
Well, I'm. I was gonna. Yeah, I just had a moment there, but I was gonna say old, but I'm gonna be nice to you tonight. So
Thank you. Yeah, I told you my date that started
yes,
basically. So I'm good as I can be. My brain is getting smoother by the second. But other than that, I'm alive. I'm a little tired, but I'm alive. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's the day before Thanksgiving, and we all seem to be prepping for, some pretty decent festivities, big or small. Hopefully, everyone who's listening is, going to be able to observe the holiday. If you do observe, we wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving and hope that, the Rangers don't, ruin your night because, you know, we're taping this as the third period winds down with the Rangers having a 3-2 lead over the Carolina Hurricanes. So, actually, just that being said, the Rangers just scored an empty netter, and it's now 4-2. And I think
Hold on, wait. They scored an empty netter? That's allowed?
apparently so.
Wow,
So
look at that, guys. So the Rangers are actually allowed to score empty netters after 2 months of every time they pulled the goalie within 8 seconds, they'd have a goal scored on 'em. So, hey, look at that.
there you go. Will Cooley with the empty net goal to essentially seal it for the Rangers, and they've last two games they've looked a lot better than they did before, but I guess this will just get right into it. So obviously before these last two games against Carolina, which is a good team, and St. Louis, who is not a good team, the Rangers just looked kind of meh. Now, I know something that's been kind of sticking in your craw a little bit, but um, you wanted to differentiate something, Dave. So obviously the Rangers did not look their best, against Detroit, against Utah, against Colorado, and against Vegas. They had spurts in those games where they were able to look like a solid team, but overall, at the end of the day, they, weren't, performing at the level that they should. So you wanted to point out something. What exactly did you want to point out in terms of this team either being just a boring team versus them being just bad?
So I am going to say for the last couple of weeks, I've been in and out being able to watch the games. I mean, you guys know I was very, you know, transparent with my work schedule and it being bullshit for a while. But hey, I'm back and starting hopefully Friday, I'm going to be able to watch the games in full again. But from what I was able to see from clips and everything, the Rangers were bad in that 4 game stretch, that 4 game losing streak. But one of the odd complaints that I saw a lot was this team is boring. And I think we have to be very clear that boring doesn't mean bad and bad doesn't mean boring. You can be both and you can be neither, but the Rangers being bad over that stretch and being wildly inconsistent has nothing to do with them being boring. It has to do with them not executing and not having great roster depth and their core aging poorly. Now, that's why they're bad. They're boring because that's how Mike Sullivan wins. That's how his teams win. They play boring hockey. You want to claw your fucking eyes out while watching them because they are supposed to shut down high danger chances. They're supposed to disrupt speed through the neutral zone. They're supposed to limit clean offensive chances against. And they're just supposed to capitalize on their chances when they get them. And when they finally get in the offensive zone themselves, grind it out a little bit, not make these, fancy plays that we're so accustomed to seeing over the last 5, 6 years. So, I mean, boring is what the Rangers are going to be under Mike Sullivan. And I think the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can take a step back and look at some of the larger issues, which, I mean, I think we've gone through all the larger issues already. It's the top six playing like dog shit. It's basically the leading goal scorer, Taylor Radish, for a month of the season, fell off the face of the earth. And he's finally regressed to what we've expected him to be. So he's probably coming out of the lineup next. The defense outside of Adam Fox can't move the puck to save their lives. Braden Schneider's been really bad and nobody's talking about it. Igor Shesterkin can't stop anything high glove. I mean, these are all things that we know when we watch the games, but I just feel like those are the things we should be focusing on and not they're boring. Like, we know they're boring. They're going to be boring, but boring can lead to a cup. The Florida Panthers are not a fun team to watch. I don't know if anybody's been watching them. Like, they won back-to-back cups basically doing what I just said, shutting down speed through the neutral zone, capitalizing when they can, and basically just grinding out wins. Edmonton's a fun team. They're fun to watch.
Well,
They
how's
lost
that
2
going
cup
for them?
finals in a row. 3? 2, right?
Yeah, but they're also just not playing well lately either. So
They have a PDO of like 920. So PDO, for those who don't know, is save percentage plus shooting percentage. So not only are they shooting like the Rangers, they are getting goaltending like the Islanders. And when that happens, you wind up the Edmonton Oilers. But it's nice to not have to hear people bitching and moaning about Chris Knobloch.
yeah.
That's not,
I-
yeah, like that's an unexpected perk.
well, I will say this. I said this to someone the other day. I don't think the Rangers are as bad as they're bad, and they're not as good as they're good, you know. But I think that they have the capability of being a decent team, and I think they can be a decent competitive average team. But when we see them just kind of get boring, I I just I don't think it's as bad as people are putting it out to be, truth be told. I really don't. Because if it really was as bad as people were putting it out to be, you get last season's team, you know. And I think this team, even though they should already be somewhat familiarized by it now, is still trying to adjust to the system. You see a lot. The reason why they look sloppy is you see a lot of the mistakes that come about on trying to figure out where to go and what to do and where to be and whatnot. But then when they play well, it's essentially them pretty much getting the fruits of a lot of the practice that's gone on. I'm a little bit more of an optimist, so I think that they're better than they're putting out. But yes, they've had some pretty bad moments, and I will second your notion on Braden Schneider not being the best. When Urho Vakanainen looks a little bit better than him out there on the ice, then I really think that that's becoming a bit of an issue. Granted, Schneider is still recovering from the labrum injury. Who knows how compromised or not compromised he can be, but he really has not looked good in many instances, especially with the goal tonight that was given up against. Granted, the Seth Jarvis shot was still a really good shot. He's been kind of suspect as of late. But you're right, though. A boring team doesn't mean a bad team. And I feel like even in some of those losses, they had spurts of where they could be good. But at the same time, it wasn't enough because they were just boring. Like I said, I don't think this team is as bad as some of the bad stuff that's gone on this season.
And I
You
do
know,
agree with you there. They're better than their record. And I think once they are fully healthy, we're going to see them go on a run. I mean, I'm not going to, they won. So, uh, excuse me. So that's 2 in a row they've won. They got Boston, who's terrible, coming up. And
Tampa
then
Bay at home.
Tampa's good at home. I mean, at home doesn't really add anything.
No.
So they got Tampa, Dallas, Ottawa, Colorado, Vegas. Holy shit.
So December is going to be a decent test for them.
Yeah,
Honestly,
and then
December will
and
be
then
a
it's
test for them.
Chicago, Montreal, the return of Chris Kreider and Jacob Truba on Monday the 15th. But then they hit a weak spot. Vancouver, St. Louis, Philly, Nashville. Washington doesn't really count. Then the Islanders, and then Carolina, and then Washington again.
Hmm.
So yeah, December starts off brutal, but they get a little bit of a spurt once they hit the middle end of December. So
Right.
hopefully they're able to figure it out by then. And that Carolina game on December 29th is the 41st game of the season. That's my second barometer or my second measuring point, I
Well,
should
that's
say.
halfway,
Yeah, and
literally.
that's the exact halfway point, and that's when Mike Sullivan's Pittsburgh Penguins in 2015, 2016 turned it around. They won 25 of their final 41 games and won a Stanley Cup.
Which is why, I don't think it's, out of the realm of possibility that, that they're going to be in the hunt, because right now they're actually, I think with the win just now, I think they're in a playoff spot, because that puts them at 26 points. I'm not sure about some of the other scores and standings as of yet, but even with the little losing swing that they had, this team is still in the hunt. Now, granted, half the league looks like they're slumping, but at the same time, the Rangers to a degree are executing, you know. So I can definitely see that happening, and it doesn't seem, like I said, as bad. And honestly, at this point, I'll take a boring team. Honestly, because
Yes.
last season they were, Peter Laviolette's system is very up tempo, which with the right pieces can do well. He's won a Stanley Cup. We all know that. We've gone through that many times. But the team was just not built for that. So Laviolette's system kind of faltered. So um but now with Sullivan, who, like we've explained many times before, plays a system very similar to John Tortorella, and it being very defensive, you're not going to see 5-1, 6-1 games, you know. And so I will take that. Honestly, I will take that any day of the week, like you said. And I think going forward, I think what fans have to kind of be prepared for is that, if you were, I know we have a lot of fans that were young when Tortorella was the coach, because, we are getting older, and I can't even believe I'm saying this. But, if you were to watch a lot of those Tortorella, era days, oh my gosh, you would find some of the most boring 1-0, 2-1 wins you could find, but they won. Obviously a lot of that was aided by Henrik Lundqvist, which is fine, but at the same time, though, we've been so far removed from it that a lot of people don't really know that that's what the Rangers are about. David Quinn's teams were very high up tempo style. Even with Gerard Gallant and Peter Laviolette, it's crazy to think that we are a couple of coaches removed from John Tortorella. But if you remember those teams very fondly, which by these both of us do, and a lot of our listeners do as well, you're getting a lot of these types of games, and this team has way more top end skill than those other teams did. So we're going to get a little bit more offense, quote unquote. But I think what fans just kind of have to be prepared for is the fact that, you're going to get these types of games. And honestly, I'll take it, because if it means that they defend well in their own zone, like they did today against Carolina, I'll take it. I don't care. One of the things that I find funny was when some Ranger fans are criticizing the Islanders while the Islanders were winning, they were like, "Oh, yeah, your team only scores like one goal a game, but yeah, but they're still winning though. I'll take that any day of the week." You know, this is when the Islanders were, making the playoffs every year pretty much, and going to the conference, the playoffs and those conference finals that they went to, or at least, the second or third round of the playoffs, when they were successful with that core that they had. You know, they weren't doing much, but let me tell you, man, they got the job done, as much as I hate to say it. So I want that for the Rangers, because that means success, that means wins. Granted, if they could end up scoring a ton, sure, why not? I'll take that. We all love a barn burner sometimes at other teams' expense. But you know if the Rangers can win every game 1-0, I'll take it. I don't care.
Boring wins championships. I
It
mean,
really does. Honestly, it really
Tampa
does.
Bay was a boring team. They won two in a row. Florida is a boring team. They won 2 in a
That's a
row.
good point about Florida. Yes.
I mean, everybody gets so into Kachuk and Barkov. That team was not like, if you sat and watched the Florida Panthers during the regular season, outside of the playoff stress, They were not fun to watch,
Right.
and it worked. They won Stanley Cups. When you're boring, it means you're fundamentally sound. You are disrupting speed and offense against, and you are taking advantage of the chances given to you, and you're not forcing it. That is hockey 101. Hockey 101 is boring. I'm sorry to say that. It's
But it's
how
true.
most Americans view soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And, every now and then, yeah, you're going to get these 6-5 boat races. Yeah, no team is going to have every game be 3-2 or, 2-1. But that's the goal, is to have those types of games, those slogs,
Mm-hmm.
because the more you shoot out, the more likely it is that you're going to hang your goalie out to dry at a bad time. Just look at how often they left Sam Bennett open in the slot on the power play against Florida 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'll mention too is that the style of hockey that they're playing right now, like you're mentioning Edmonton and you're mentioning Florida and Tampa Bay, is this type of game wins playoff games. They're playing playoff hockey in October right now, or November rather. I said it in October. They're playing playoff style hockey. They obviously still need to kind of get used to what's going on with the team and the strategy, but they're getting prepared to play a hard game. And I think what was missing with a lot of the Ranger teams over the last couple of years is that they were never able to match what those other teams, like you mentioned, Florida and Tampa Bay, to a degree, Carolina. Um, they weren't ever really able to match it. Now, obviously, with Carolina, they're probably the worst of the two, so the Rangers were able to kind of get by, but they weren't really able to get by Tampa Bay. They weren't really able to get by, Florida. And granted, it may suck at times, but you know what the Rangers are trying to do is play the style of game that wins cups. And Mike Sullivan's teams have done it for both his Stanley Cups. He's a proven winner. He's got the track record for it. And we'll say it till we're blue to the face. Now, that's not to say that, the Rangers are going to be perfect. They're going to be bad because they have had games, the Vegas game in particular, and even the Utah game over the last week and a half was really bad. But the one thing that you can take from it is that there were spurts of positivity in terms of what they want to do in terms of, uh, you know, their style of game. Now, I will mention this before we move on to the next topic. Is uh, they made an emphasis on rotating with their D a little bit more in the St. Louis game, because if you noticed over the weekend and over last week with their games out west, they really were just not really moving around. That's been kind of the biggest gripe with this team so far, is that the offense would move it around, but the defense would stay stagnant. But when they played against St. Louis on Monday night, which I was there for, which was nice to see, they were, the defense was very active, and even one of the goals, Vladislav Gavrikov was down in the corner and was able to deliver a nice feed to Adam Edstrom, who was in front of the net. But also their power play seems a bit more dangerous, even though they haven't really done much lately in it. Um, they look a bit more dynamic when it comes to moving the puck around, and even now in tonight's game, you had a lot of the defensemen coming in and really helping out. But uh, Matthew Robertson was key in getting Noah Laba the first goal, because the defense was pushing it in and they had a pretty good cycle. So I think now they seem to kind of want to involve the D a little bit more. And so far these last two games, it's paid off, pretty good for them, you know?
Yep. And I think this all goes into what our theme has been since the season started. Like all this plays, like we're talking about very specific examples of, we just got to be patient,
Mm-hmm.
and we're starting to see the roster construction change. Yuso Parson cleared waivers; he's gone. Gabe Perreault is going to. Oh, did they recall Scott Morrow today?
No, they recalled Connor Mackey.
Oh,
It's
okay,
because
okay,
it's
I
because
got that.
Morrow hasn't. I don't think Morrow played yet for them, and I think he has to be there for a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
why.
yeah, it's that new thing, he has to play a game or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I missed that because my oldest got sent home with Coxsackie. For those who don't know, that's hand, foot, and mouth. Those are the blisters. So it's been an interesting day for me. So I missed that. But we're starting to see that roster construction starting to happen. Yuso Parsonen is gone. We're going to see Scott Morrow come back up at some point. He wasn't atrocious. He was as
Wasn't
bad as every other Ranger. And I want
wasn't
to
great
be
either,
like,
though. I will say that.
no, he wasn't good, but he wasn't the worst thing that the Rangers have ever called up.
Yeah.
He wasn't Libor Hayek.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves now. He could be very well,
He
but
could be, but in
I
that
don't want him
stretch,
to
he
be.
wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't in that stretch, and I feel bad for Matthew Robertson, who's now getting the Libor Hayek treatment. Not good enough to play, but good enough that Drury doesn't want to lose him on waivers. Call that the Mason Gearston effect.
Did you? I think you explained that the last podcast.
I did.
I think you did. Yeah.
All right. So okay. Anyway,
But you can explain it again if you want.
Long story short, Drury thought Mason Gearston would clear waivers in like 2022 or something. The Devils claimed him. And ever since then, Drury's been too afraid to waive anybody he might lose on waivers. It's actually kind of funny. But anyway, we're starting to see that roster turnover happen. Gabe Perreault is going to be back as soon as the Rangers figure out cap space. And since Parsonen just cleared, I think they have to wait another day before they have enough cap space to recall Perreault. But I'm not an actuary. I'm not a cap actuary, so I'm not 100%. We need a hockey stat miner to let us know how much they can recall right now. But Perreault will be back once they have cap space or once they waive Taylor Radish, which I think will be coming at some point. That's the second domino that people have been upset about. And the third, Connor Sheary, gets way too much hate. Way too much hate.
I don't
If
agree with
he
that.
has 2 goals, if he has 2 goals on the season, or 3 goals, we'll call it 3 goals. What are the 25 games, 3 goals? If he has 3 goals on the season, nobody's talking about nepotism. Nobody's talking about him stealing roster spots from kids. He is doing everything that he has come here to do at half of the salary of Taylor Radish. He has been better than Taylor Radish. He is driving offense. He is doing very well on defense. The only thing when you look at his stats is 0 goals. And if you're only focusing on goals and you're missing the point of roles on the ice and roles on the team, Connor Sheary has been fine.
Yeah.
And if we're really going to lose our shit over a $750,000 player, come on. Or
Yeah.
900, whatever the minimum salary is nowadays.
Well, it's funny you mention that because that actually leads into my next point is so there's been some shuffling with the roster. Obviously, you just mentioned Uso Parsonen. Uh he got put on waivers and he cleared. He's in Hartford now. So that'll if you didn't know, his salary will basically mostly be buried. He will have about $100,000 cap hit against the Rangers on their NHL club, which I mean is peanuts compared to,
People were complaining about that, though, Tyler.
but yeah, you know what though? It's like
Love
I
you,
said,
Tyler.
yeah,
Having fun, Tyler.
it's like I said though. I mean, it's like that's not something to get, all bent out of shape. Everybody on Twitter is losing their minds over it. But in reality, just I'm not defending Chris Drury because yeah, 2 years might have been a bit too much, but you also have to hedge your bets. Parsonen was with a couple of different teams, and look, I thought this was going to be the case. I know you pointed it out in the chat that I kind of got on your case about Parsonen, but at the same time, from what I saw with him with Laviolette, and even in certain instances with the Rangers with Mike Sullivan, he kind of seemed like he could have fit the mold of a player that could really fit into the system, but he got outplayed by Noah Laba, and every player, every team makes moves like this to make sure that they have enough depth to essentially fill out holes. Because if Noah Laba didn't work out, well, who's going to be your third seed? More than likely, it would be Uso Parsonen. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world for them to do because it's essentially insurance. The only thing you could probably knock is the fact that he signed for that, that contract for 2 years. But at the same time, it was no really scratch off their back. You didn't really know how things were going to turn out with the way the team was so far. So it's just kind of one of those things where you just have to cut your losses, and it's fine. You know, yeah, Parsonen had some decent moments here, but I doubt we'll see him back on the NHL club the rest of the year. But then also I want to mention you talked about Connor Sheary, but then also Brett Berard made his way back when JT Miller went down
Yes, and
2
Berard's
games ago.
staying. I don't think he's going anywhere.
No, after tonight, and especially after the other night against St. Louis, even though he only had minimal playing time, I thought he looked fantastic. And I think what Sullivan is seeing now is, especially with the goal that Lava scored, which was an absolute sick wrister if you hadn't seen it.
I
Um,
saw that. That was a beautiful shot.
right. But if you're listening to this by, because we are releasing this after Thanksgiving, um, you'll know and you'll see, and if you watch the whole sequence, they were really moving the puck well around. It was kind of a bit of a, nice little Hartford thing where you had Berard, Robertson, and Laba all basically moving around and generating offense in the zone. Um, but just the way that Laba has looked with Berard over these last 2 games, he's looked really good, and I think that they complement each other's styles perfectly because they're both kind of piss and vinegar sort of players, but then also Laba is really good down the middle. They're essentially similar players, but one's a winger, another one is a center, and they both have similar speed. And I think that's going to benefit them, for the rest of the year. I think Brett Berard is going to stay. Seems like he's got his confidence back. It is tough kind of being injured and going back down to Hartford. So I think that he's going to stay. And I think ultimately, I think what'll end up happening is I think once Gabe Perreault comes back, I think you'll see Will Cooley get bumped down to the third line
Where
with
he should be, where
with
he should
Berard and
be.
Laba, right? And I think that will be tremendous for the Rangers. Look, I love Will Cooley. He's going to be in the top 6 soon enough, but um, he's clearly still kind of, I don't want to say developing, but I think he's still sort of learning, certain things, and I think he needs to kind of fill out a little bit more in terms of just trying to get around the higher end skill players. So when Perot comes back, I think he'll hop back right up on the first line. Um, and then, obviously with Berard and Miller and everybody else coming back, and also I will say this, Vincent Trocheck, since coming back from his injury, has probably been the best offensive player for this team so far, which I think
Yes,
has
he
been
has.
nothing but fantastic. And it's also great for my fantasy team because I have him. So, I really think that if the cards are played right and they really begin to sort of hit a groove, I really think that this could be a turning point for the team.
You know what? Let us look at the schedule starting with that 41st game at Carolina, at Washington to close out 2025. At Florida, okay, home, Utah, Buffalo, at Boston versus Seattle. That's a 4-game stretch. They can win all 4. Ottawa's a good team right now. We don't know what they're going to look like in a month. At Philly, at Anaheim. I think Anaheim eventually cools off. At LA. Oh, God, they're out west. At San Jose. Boston, Islanders, Pittsburgh. They can go on a run.
Yes,
And
they
then they
can.
have, yeah, that January, I'm looking, I see Florida is not good right now because they're missing both Kachuk and Barkov. I don't know how long Kachuk's out for. But let's see, just January. Let's say they lose to Florida, Ottawa, Anaheim, because Anaheim is surprisingly good. 3. LA, 6 overtime losses for LA. Holy crap. Uh, and we'll say LA. So that's 4 games that they lose in January out of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. If they go 10-4 in January, nobody's having any fucking complaints about this team anymore.
Oh no, absolutely not. And I think that by that time they will have a pretty good idea. I think they'll even have a decent idea of what the team will look like by the end of the month.
Yeah,
By the end of this month.
absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
and I think that there is sort of an onus to bring back Gabe Perreault because they wouldn't make all this hubbub about it if they were just going to have him there down temporarily. I think that they know that with Perreault on this team on the first line, um, that's where they're their best at. And I think, like I said before on other podcasts, and I said it about Laba, and I'll say it about Perot, like I did, is you need a guy like that to stick into the role that he is fit for. And I think what they're going to do once they sort of figure out the cap implications and when they're able to use money from the, whole Parsonen, whether they bring down, Mackey and bring up Morrow, is I think that they're going to stick Perot there and he's going to be here the rest of the season, just like Berard. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that will provide them the speed and the boost that they need. Because again, I really think Brett Berard plays a bigger role on this team than most people think. And I think with him there and then with Perot here, sort of getting comfortable with how, the NHL's pace game is, I think they're gonna, like you said, go on a run, so to speak. And they may not be the best team, but I really think that this team does have it in them to do it. I really do, honestly. And tonight is game are with games like this kind of show me that they have what it takes to really sort of kind of push their way in.
I agree with you for the most part. I don't think, as currently constructed, they are a cup winning team.
Oh no, I didn't say cup winning team. I just said that they're gonna make a run.
Okay, sorry. My bad,
Because
misunderstood. Again, not I haven't really slept much. All
no,
right,
no, it's
I'll take
okay.
the L on that.
No, I
Uh,
look, I know this team's not a cup team. I'm well aware of that. But I think what I think just overall in the grand scheme of things is again, I know Chris Drury's not perfect and we're essentially stuck with the guy. So I have to
Very
root for him to make sure that, I have no choice but to root for the guy. It's not like I won't get upset at the stuff that he does. But the notion that this team is sort of in the doldrums, I don't agree with. I really don't. And I feel like a lot of I mean, I got the tail end of the dark ages.
Oh God,
So,
you missed a fun time.
well, I kind of got the gist of it for the most part because, it's very similar to my experience with the Mets. It's like, how come everybody else is doing well except my team? And I got the tail end of the dark ages. So pretty much, I was kind of able to see a little bit of what that was about. But just from studying and looking and, getting archival footage and looking up stuff and making videos about it and whatever, the Rangers had no prospects back in the day. They had nothing. They traded everybody away. They fumbled with a lot of their draft choices. And there was nothing coming up from Hartford that was really going to ensure.
Binghamton at the time.
Well, no, no, towards the end it was Hartford because this I'm talking about at
Oh,
least.
you're talking about the end of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
the end of the end.
they ended up going to Hartford. They left Binghamton to go to Hartford the year after the Whalers left because they needed someone to occupy the arena. So they moved the team from Binghamton to the Hartford Civic Center. Which, by the way, I will say I did. There is a couple of Binghamton Ranger games online. They're actually really cool to watch because it's like you kind of see some names you could pick up, but it's interesting.
I
But
went to school in Binghamton, and it was like a year or two after the Rangers left. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, right?
go figure, right?
Yeah,
Right when you're there, they bounce.
of course. It's like they
But
knew what my future was going to hold. They said, you know what, fuck this guy.
right. So they moved to Hartford in the mid 90s and there wasn't really much coming from Hartford. Now obviously they probably had some one or two players that probably did somewhat well from Hartford, but nothing where you can be like, "Oh yeah, this guy's going to be like a game changer." But right now the Rangers have a lot coming in from the system, whether or not these players are going to be top end scorers remains to be seen. But they do have a lot of decent players that they can rely on and put onto the team right now, and they'd fit in. Noah Lava and Brett Berard are the perfect example of that. Will Cooley is the perfect example of that. So and then you obviously you have guys like Hemelash. You have Adam Sikora who still has some potential. Bryce McConnell Barker who could potentially be a name in a few. So it's not as bad as people put it out to be. And again, like Rob says, and you echo the sentiment as well, is that this is not the final product. And I think now with a lot of the turnover that they've had, you can't expect them to win a cup, but they can be competitive though. And that's honestly all you can ask for. Now you may, how come you're selling them short? Well, because they're not at the level they need to be yet. So if they decide to surprise us, because anything can happen in hockey, sure, I'll be more than happy with it. I just want the team to make the playoffs for the time being. It would be nice, especially after the debacle from last season, because you want to talk about a team in peril. The way that team looked towards the end of the last season, that was a bad situation. And I'll give Drury credit where credit is due. he got he got rid of a lot of those bad contracts that needed to get, or like those players that weren't really needed. He got rid of it. So it just all depends on how he does it, in terms of trying to, you know, work around what he has. But I don't think it's as bad as people are putting it out to be, honestly.
Yeah, it's because everyone's so paranoid about last year, and
Which
that
is fair.
team. It's fair. No, it's very. I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm saying that people are. Last year is still fresh in everybody's mind, especially because people think Mika Zibanejad was another driver of the mutiny, but against a mutiny against Drury. But if you say he's a driver of the mutiny, you can't also say he's too quiet in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like it's one or the other. He's either a driver of that mutiny or he's too quiet. And if you think he's too quiet, fine. Like that that is what it is. That's not his style. That's why he was never actually the captain, despite people wanting him to be it. So that's just his personality, and he's been great this year,
Oh, he's been
Zibanejad.
phenomenal. Oh, he's been phenomenal.
And
Oh, yeah.
people can't seem to get past last year. Like, I get that last year sucked, but you got to move on and realize A, half of those guys are gone or will be gone in terms if we're including Artemi Panarin in this, because he's going to be gone. They're in the middle of a retool. And if we're seeing these holes on the ice, even if you don't like Drury, which not many of us do at this point, you got to trust Mike Sullivan sees this and says, hey, I need another puck mover on the left side.
Yeah.
Hey, I could probably use some more scoring depth and speed. What about this Perot kid? Let's get him up here.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mike Sullivan is essentially a coach slash assistant GM, half a GM. I don't know, because he had a lot of control over his Pittsburgh rosters too.
Yeah. Oh, no, 100%, and I think Sullivan has sort of the same pull here. Um, I I think that now with Sullivan in the fray, which is essentially Drury's guy, you sort of at this point, kind of similar to what Mets fans currently have to do with David Stearns right now, is you kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt, you know?
Yeah,
Um, because
you
it
give
d
Sullivan the benefit of the doubt, not
yeah,
Drury.
well, even Drury to a degree because Drury's gonna have to listen to Sully, because Sully ultimately at the end of the day is, he's going to be, the one that's going to have input on the roster. So I think Drury is going to have to kind of listen to that. So he gets a little leeway because they're going to be in lockstep. I think that these guys are going to work a lot more closely than Drury did with Laviolette or Gallant. So I think you have to kind of see how it turns out, because then if you're going to make this big fuss about, you know, finally getting the coach that you need, you know, you have to see how he does with him, you know? You have to see how he is with the guy that he wanted. And if he's successful, great. If he's not, well, then the next guy's going to do it, you know? So
Yep.
I think with the Rangers there has to be some sort of patience, because, you just have to see how much input is Sully going to have in terms of, what he wants to build for his roster with Drury. So I just that's just how my brain operates, and I think it's a little bit more logical than anything, because maybe because of the disorganization he had with other coaches, you know it's the reason why nothing kind of worked. But they clearly have a type of player they have in mind. So you have to see how the unit can work together when they finally get what they want, you know? So I have to give them the benefit of the doubt for at least the next 2 seasons, which is why, again, when just evaluating the team as a whole, you have to see that there are signs of progress relative to what Drury has done over the last year and a half, whether it's relations with the players, getting people to kind of be the liaison for the players, but also just finding the players that will fit right into what Sullivan's trying to do. would also not trying to alienate the rest of the room in terms of, Mika and JT Miller and Adam Fox and all that. So I have to do that, and it only makes sense. Now, if we're 2 years from now and there's still kind of this mediocre and Chris Drury hasn't really done anything and, you know, Mike Sullivan really hasn't, it's only gotten to this point and nothing has improved, then yeah, you want to change the GM. And whether that GM wants to change the coach to keep the coach remains to be seen. But they need time. They need time. And they've expressed that.
Yep. And again, this is the same message: patience, patience, patience.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rangers have a lot of the pieces in place. What is the real argument that I listen to, and it's the only one that I will listen to right now because I think everything else is doom and gloom, is the Rangers have not replaced Chris Kreider's production. Maybe Gabe Perreault can and Brett Berard and Noah Laba can do it in the aggregate. They have not replaced his production, and they're about to lose Artemi Panarin. They're about to trade him. When I say they're about to trade him, let's be real. He's not I don't think he's resigning. So that's 100. Let's call it 90 points for Panarin and 70 points for Kreider. Probably about 100 goals in that mix too. 80 goals in that mix. They haven't replaced them. That's the concern for me. That's excuse me. That's a concern going into next season. Obviously, we have to see what the eventual Panarin trade comes to be. But to me, that's the only real concern beyond this season is how are they actually replacing all this offensive production that they're losing? Who is that next star? Brandon just wrote, who is that next star that the Rangers are going to have? I love Gabe Perreault. Putting him into that star role right away. That's what they did with Lafreniere, and that look at everybody hates him despite the fact that he's actually doing a lot of things right for the Rangers that nobody notices.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to put Perreault in that exact same situation? No, they need something. They need somebody there that can be a point per game player. It's not Zibanejad anymore. Miller's barely doing anything, which that's a whole other fucking problem. So who's that 100-point guy? And if you don't have a 100-point guy, you need a couple of 80-point guys. Who are those guys?
Mm-hmm.
That's the next step. And I don't think they don't have him in the system, I don't think. So who is that guy? And how are they going to get him?
Well,
And that's not, I'm not expecting anybody to be able to answer that, by the way. It's just
yeah, it's hypothetical.
yeah, but like unless they find a miracle trade for Jason Robertson, which I would lose my shit, by the way, if that happened.
Which I still think that's what they're going to try and go for, which I think would be great.
I mean, I think Braden Schneider may be a perfect fit in Dallas.
I think so too. At this point, with a lot of what the Rangers have in terms of like coming on defense, I think that wouldn't be a terrible move to kind of look to see what you can have for that. But this, for some reason, the organization seems very adamant on keeping him. Either that, or they just don't want to trade him for just anybody, which I do understand to a degree. So, you know, I, uh, I, I think that moving Schneider to Dallas, I think would be ideal in the sense that that's like a perfect trade partner.
It really is. Dallas has no right-handed defenseman, and Braden Schneider's been sneaky bad, and nobody's talking about it. And the Rangers would do best to capitalize now while they can. Get Keandre Miller trade value out of him.
Mm-hmm. So, but anyways, so I guess, there wasn't really much else to kind of discuss. I think we kind of touched on pretty much what's happened over the last week and a half. But I guess before we go, final thoughts, Dave. I know you were jazzed up about something.
I don't know if that's appropriate, but fuck it, why not? Because I forgot to put questions up. Because again, my day was a little rough. Um, so wife and I had Wendy's for dinner because our Thanksgiving plans got shot to hell because Koksaki's running through the house. And we're like, fuck it, we want stress food. So we got Wendy's. And, you know, I'm driving back and I got this giant plastic cup of Dr. Pepper, which is the world's greatest soda.
I agree.
Really?
I love Dr.
Look at
Pepper. Are
look
you
at
kidding me?
look at that. You have an
Oh,
actual good food take.
oh, I love Dr. Pepper. What
Yeah.
makes you think that I, out of all people, would not like Dr. Pepper?
Because you have terrible food takes. That's why.
Well,
Anyway, back on point. Back on point. All right, we're not getting sidetracked here. So I have this giant plastic cup and a paper fucking straw. What is the point of the paper straw and the cancer glue that holds it together if you're going to give it to me in with a plastic fucking cup? Everyone talks about virtue signaling whenever somebody says something on the internet that they don't like. Oh, you're virtue signaling for whatever issue. No, the ultimate virtue signal is because that one fucking sea turtle that has straw up its nose. Now I have to drink cancer glue every time I go to a fast food restaurant, and it doesn't make sense because you're still serving it to me in a giant plastic fucking cup. Are you kidding me? Give me the papers, give me the plastic straw, or get rid of the giant plastic cup. Why are we doing this? What the fuck is the point? Okay, I'm done.
Well, I will say this. I do agree with you to a degree. I know why they say they did it, but at the same time, the thing that
Because of
annoys
the
me the
fucking sea turtle.
yeah,
Like
well,
they're Jack fucking Sparrow.
well, I read somewhere that just kind of the whole changing of the straw thing was sort of inconsequential to everything. But I will say this though, you know, every time I go to Wendy's or any of these fast food places around here, at least, because you go out to like Pittsburgh or even in Pennsylvania, everything is still plastic. Um, but I'll go and I'll get my soda, and then like this the straw will just end up starting to like fizzle into the drink.
Oh yeah, it does
So,
disintegrate.
and I'm like, well, I want to have a drink, not have a drink with, a straw residue on it, and who knows what chemicals they put in that. So, I don't want to sound like crazy old man here, but I mean, I don't like it. Then again, some environmentalist is going to come in and correct me or whatever, correct us. And it's like, all right, well, whatever, dude. But it's like,
If we get corrected by an actual environmentalist on this, I'm actually going to listen because I want to know why we're doing this paper straw bullshit when we're still getting giant plastic cups. And like they go and they eliminate the plastic bags, which great, I'm okay with that. But they call them single use bags, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard because there is not one person in existence in this country that doesn't have one plastic bag filled with all their other plastic bags that they use as garbage bags.
we still do that here at
I
my
still
house.
have it too. Everybody has it.
Yeah.
Every single person in this country has a plastic bag of plastic bags. So they were never single use bags.
Yeah.
So, and they do that, but they don't get the actual biggest plastic polluters, which is the fishing industry.
Right. Yeah. No one ever,
So, like,
no one ever mentions that, but
because they don't want to go after corporations. They want to punt everything to the purse, to the people. Same thing with the carbon footprint. If you want to Google that, how the oil companies shove that down our throats to make
I
all of
know.
us feel guilty about it
Well, I'm
when they're the
familiar with
ones.
that.
Yeah, it's just like, how about we start holding corporations? Wow, we completely went off the
Yeah.
rails on
No,
this.
we did. We
Okay,
definitely
anyway,
did.
coming full circle, how about we start holding Cablevision and Altice One, who Jim Dolan sold Cablevision to, responsible for all these inconsistencies with the Rangers broadcast team? It's been a
Well,
different one every game, or at least it feels like it.
well, that's another podcast for another day. So,
Yes, it is. I just wanted to end it on something that was Rangers related because we went
yeah.
off the fucking rails real
Well,
fast.
yeah. Well, you did. I was just here for the ride. So, anyways,
I can't even argue that because that's 1,000% accurate.
correct. So yeah, so basically, again, we want to thank everybody for taking the time out to listen. We appreciate you. It's Thanksgiving, and we hope that if you do observe, we hope that you have a wonderful holiday, that you and your loved ones, or however you decide you want to spend it, you have a good one. We hope that the Rangers can hopefully give us something to kind of cheer about over the next couple of days as well. Want to thank everyone who contributes to the site, who listens to the podcast, the Patreon subscribers, the fellow writers, the listeners, the commenters. You guys are the best. Did I mention the Patreon subscribers? Yeah, I'll mention them again because my brain isn't working too well right now. So, but I want to thank you all for taking the time out. Thank you, Dave. Thank you to the rest of our contributors. And yeah, this has been Live from the Blue Seats. We hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you guys next week. And let's go, Rangers.